Hey guys, Brian Hilliard here, and I am with Mark Shank, who is the Managing Director of Encore Communication. And Mark, thanks so much for stopping by. We really appreciate it.
Sure, great to be here.
Awesome.
It really is.
Awesome. So I know that you do a lot of speaking.
Yes.
You go out, you do a lot of training, you work with companies and do events and things like that. Maybe for those of them who maybe don't know you a little bit, haven't seen you or anything like that, I know you do a lot of work in sales and leadership and things like that, communication. Tell us a little bit about what you're all about, maybe what makes you so passionate about going out and doing some of these events when you're going out and training folks around the country.
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, Brian, because it is a passion of mine to go out and help people become better at what they do.
Right.
Each and every day, whether it's leadership, whether it's sales, whether it's communication, taking those people that really need some skill sets around certain areas of their job and making them better at what they do. And I've had a lot of opportunity to do that in my career so far, working with Fortune 500 companies like Cisco Systems, GlaxoSmithKline, and having an opportunity to work with those people and working with the executives and the training directors and people that really want to make a difference in their organization.
Well, because you hear so much about, I hear about leadership and just leadership specifically.
Yeah.
And these are big topics, right? Leadership, sales, communication. Philosophically, if somebody was thinking, hey, listen, you know what? I want to be able to maybe think about hiring Mark. I've got a presentation or I've got some training that I want to do.
Right.
What would you say, just from a philosophical standpoint, what are people getting from you?
Yeah, it's a great question because really when it comes down to it, I think many times the word leadership is thrown around too loosely.
Oh yeah,
I just don't think.
I totally agree with that.
I just don't think leadership training here and there and everywhere. But my philosophy around leadership in particular is really about getting people to want to struggle for shared aspirations. It's a definition that I read in a book one time, and it stuck with me because you can read everything from John Maxwell to Simon Sinek and all these people that are really great at what leadership is all about. But the definition that really stuck with me was the ability to get others to want to struggle for shared aspirations.
Interesting.
The want to. How do you get people to do that?
Right.
And it's all about modeling the way, helping them by giving them feedback, coaching. Right. It's listening. It's all the skills that really people don't think about when they think about leadership.
Right.
And I like it to do something like by design, not by default.
Right.
So many people are in leadership positions and they work on their skill set by default. They just do it without thinking. Right. And so you really need to be aware of what actions you're taking and what you're saying and how you're saying it.
Right.
And have an idea of what that means.
Right.
And that's by design.
Right.
And so that's what I bring to corporations is let's just don't throw it at the wall and see where it sticks. Let's have some structure around it. Let's make it stick. Let's make it workable and have long-lasting results.
And I would probably say that transcends just leadership too, right? You're talking about communication. You're talking about sales.
Yes.
Philosophically, I think what you're getting at is that you want people to, like you said, what was that? Live by design, not by default.
Yeah.
I read a book. I don't remember if I read a book or if I saw it somewhere. I know. I was listening to Cash Flow Quadrant, Robert Kiyosaki. All right. And one of the points that he made is that a lot of people, they want to have a conversation about change.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's not true. What a lot of people want to have a conversation about is about getting better results while doing the same thing.
Okay.
Okay, but we won't get into that today.
Right.
And what happens though is he said he went to a seminar and he said it was on goal setting. And he said that what really stuck with him was the three words: be, do, and have. And what he was saying was, and this could be for communication, this could be for sales, this could be for leadership, with your clients.
Sure.
But I think what I'm hearing you say is you need to be the type of person that people would want to follow.
Correct.
You need to be the type of sales manager that people can understand. You need to be the type of manager who can communicate effectively with their employees.
Yes.
And then when you're doing these other things, you can have the benefits. I think that's what you're getting at.
It certainly goes across all three areas, whether it is leadership, communication, or sales.
Right.
And so you're exactly right. It makes a lot of sense that that you want to be those people. And,
Right.
and when I look at training in particular, it's all about being very pragmatic in my approach. In
Right.
fact, what's going to work?
Right.
Let's just don't throw something at a class for
Right.
an opportunity for 2 days
Right.
and then leave and nothing happens.
Right.
We've all experienced that.
I have too, yeah.
I know you have.
I
I
know,
have.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't want to be and haven't been that type of trainer, that type of facilitator, that type of instructor
Okay.
to do that. I really, my mindset is all around making sure that people leave with something that they can actually use.
Well, then let's jump in right there. Give me, and you can use either one if you want to do leadership, sales, or communication. Give us an example of what specific, maybe from a class you've taught, training you've done, whatever. What is something specific that people have told you, or maybe you feel like you was adding that they walked away from, either in one of those 3 areas, where people are like, oh boy, you know what, this was really different, or this really impacted me.
Well, that's pretty easy to come up with.
Okay.
When you give me the opportunity to look at those 3 buckets, I can stay there all day long. Really, there are so many impactful opportunities in these classes or in these areas. And one that I find really helps is around in sales. We talk about salespeople go in, they talk about their product, they talk about their solutions.
Right.
And times are changing. It's not necessarily a solution-oriented type of thing now. It's more of a, what are you going to bring to me as a vendor? What are you going to bring to me? The customer's looking for information. They're looking for help. Right. And what I find is if you don't listen extremely well, and I give them 5 areas of listening, and how to effectively do that, and they practice it in the class and they understand it.
Oh, right. So you do role play.
I do role playing
Okay.
with questions. I always say garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
You're only as good as the questions you ask.
I totally agree.
And so,
I totally agree.
we focus on what are the good questions. What do great salespeople ask?
Right.
And then, obviously, you have to listen to the response.
Right.
And then you have to come up with, well, what solution is best in this situation?
Right.
And then come in with a plan and come in with, here's what I think you should do and here's why.
I totally
Bring
agree.
in something from the outside about where the market's going, what impact it's going to have on that particular business, because you should be that expert around that industry.
Right.
These customers don't always know.
Right.
Because they're so in tune to their everyday interactions, right?
And let me stop you there for a second, because what a great point that is. I think as salespeople, in my opinion, I think, and you're the expert here, but I think as salespeople, what happens is they think of themselves as product purveyors. Right?
Yep.
I mean, Michael Bosworth wrote the book Solution Selling, which I thought was good.
Yeah.
And but you're adding value.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's almost like, and I think I'm hearing you say this, it's almost like you teach the salespeople to view themselves as owners of the business, and maybe almost an extension of the business, as opposed to the age-old order takers.
Exactly. And you mentioned Bosworth. There's also the challenger sale, which talks about how you need to challenge the customer a little bit more. Instead of just going along with what the customer thinks they need, challenge them. No, I don't think that's really what you're looking for.
Isn't that
I don't really
interesting?
think that's something that's really going to help you. It might help you.
So if they lose the deal, now remember, he specifically said that challenge them more. Okay.
Yes, because if 2 years from now, you may be calling that same vendor back, and they're not happy.
I totally agree.
You might sell them the wrong solution.
Right.
So I find that when salespeople are honest and they say, you know what, Mr. Customer, I don't think this is right for you. You don't need the $2,000 solution. You only need the $750 solution.
Right.
I mean, that builds trust. Think about it. When you take your car into a repair shop.
My wife's doing that today.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, when she calls you on the phone or she texts you and says, hey, guess what, Brian? It's not going to cost $2,500. It's only going to cost $1,000 because we really don't need this part that we thought. All of a sudden, that you're going to go back to that repair shop because they demonstrated honesty, value, right?
And a lot of times what you're talking about is integrity too.
That's it.
You know what I mean? And I always tell people that if you can have, when you're in sales, when you're in sales, and really, if we can transition for a second, this also applies to communication and leadership, right? Because if you're a manager, right? And you're coming from a place that's not in integrity, and I won't say that they're lying, I'm not saying they're cheating, I'm just saying not in integrity, whatever you want that to mean, okay? When they're coming from a place out of integrity, the whole team can see that. the employees can see that,
Mm-hmm.
and I know from personal experience that whenever I have a communication, and I know you talk with people about, dealing with difficult situations
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, what
Right.
is I'll go, if you want to go old school, how about we go back to Stephen Covey,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and the emotional bank account? I mean, if we're going to go to the way back machine.
Sure.
Okay.
That's pretty far back. That's back in the early 90s.
Yeah,
when I
let's
used
go
teach
back to
that.
the way
Yeah.
back machine.
Yeah.
Stephen Covey has this conversation about emotional bank account.
He does.
Okay.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing you say is that when you're communicating with people, you're teaching them training wise, you're teaching them to have this emotional bank account so that when you have the difficult situation, when you go in sales, when you're trying to lead by design, that people are able to be receptive to that. I think that's right.
Of course, yeah. I mean, and you said it, emotional bank account, the more that you put into the account, if you have a withdrawal, obviously it's not going to be as severe
Right.
as if you had no deposits at all.
That's exactly
the
right.
whole idea.
That's exactly right.
And so that's how you want to manage your people. That's how you want to lead your people.
Right.
Not the fact that you're looking forward to taking out withdrawals,
Right.
but things are going to happen.
Right.
Things aren't going to always go your way. There's going to be conflict.
Right.
You're going to have to manage through that conflict, which, by the way, is another area that I get into around communication.
Okay.
How do you manage through conflict? How do you deal with conflict? Because a lot of the same listening skills and
Right.
things like that pertain to those types of situations.
Well, conflict is a big one because you get that in work all the time. People think that conflict is just some type of like wrestling match, and that's not really the case, I don't think, right?
It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be, right.
No.
I think a lot of times, you can have employees, and maybe I'll ask you this question. This might be a good question, which is, how, if you were a manager, talking to a manager, maybe they're listening or watching,
Right.
and they have some employees that maybe they feel like aren't giving it their all, or maybe a step further, maybe even being passive aggressive, because I'm sure you've seen that before.
Sure.
Give us some ideas, or even an idea or a tidbit. How would you talk to that manager if they were, if you're doing a training class with those folks? What's a first step when you have employees who are maybe
Right.
actively going out of their way to slow the ship down?
Right. It's interesting because what you do is, I call it an empathic assertion.
Okay.
Which is really when you go into a situation, you see someone that you know is passive aggressive. They
Right.
might be saying something sarcastic
Yep.
during a team meeting.
Yep.
They may be withdrawing completely.
Right.
Whatever the case, you want to go up to that person when everyone's gone.
Right.
And just say, something to the effect of, I sense that you're really not in tune with what we're doing here.
Great start.
Or I get the impression that we're not going as fast as you would like, or we're not hitting on
Right.
some areas that you
Right.
think are important.
Right.
Because and the key
That's
to
a
what
good
I
start.
just said is I sense, or I
was
I
thinking
get
that.
the impression.
Right.
They're I statements,
Yep.
but they're not matter of fact
Right.
statements.
Right.
So it gives the opportunity for the person to say,
Right.
you know what? Yeah, I'm struggling here.
Right.
Or they'll say, well, not really.
Right.
Well then what's on your mind?
Right.
Well, it's this.
Right.
So what it does, it gives the opportunity for the door to open,
Right.
for you to have some discussion.
Right.
And if they don't want to talk about it at that point, that's fine.
Right.
Then you address it later.
Right.
But anytime you're sensing something is not right,
Right.
it's I sense,
Right.
I get the impression,
Right.
I get the feeling,
Right.
and those stems will help you to move forward in those situations.
That's an awesome point, Mark, because
Yeah.
you know what I picked up? I picked up something from a book or whatever. It said, never assume intent. A lot of times we assume intent.
Yes, we do.
So you have somebody who's not doing a good job at the team and they're not pulling their weight, and you say, oh, well, that person doesn't like me, or that person is this.
It's easier. It's
good-
easier to do that.
That's a good point. And that person might be going through a divorce.
Yeah.
That person might be having some issues with the kids.
Yep.
That person might be having a health condition that you have no idea
Yep.
about.
Yep.
And I love those I statements, because what it gets into, what I heard you say was,
Mm-hmm.
you're just talking about what you're seeing,
Right.
and your perception of it.
Exactly. It's the observable fact.
That's exactly right.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Because you could say something to the effect of, I sense you're upset because
Mm-hmm.
when you made the statement that we weren't getting this done fast enough.
Right.
That led me to believe this.
Right.
Am I right? So you don't want to be you don't want to jump to conclusions
Right.
too quickly.
Right.
And
I
that's
love
what,
that.
That's what you're referring to.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap this up here. Let
Sure.
me ask a question that people are probably also thinking.
Okay.
What makes you different? What makes you so? There's you do a lot of speaking.
Mm-hmm.
You go across the country. You actually go across the world.
Right.
Have done that.
Right.
And done some different things. What makes you so? If I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, boy, you know what? This guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about.
Right.
What should I? What makes Mark Shank and Encore Communication different than quite frankly, the guy who came last year
Right.
at our sales.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
just.
And it's a great
asking.
question. It's something that people want to know.
Right.
Because I would want to know it.
Right.
Right. What makes us different? Because not everyone's in this space.
Right.
Right. That you and I are in.
Right.
And really, what it comes down to is a few things.
Okay.
I really find that people learn, and research has stated this, that people learn and remember when they have fun,
Interesting.
when they're entertained,
Okay.
when they laugh.
So you're going to juggle?
Well, not
That's
necessarily.
ridiculous. Of course not.
I don't. I can juggle one ball, sure,
Okay.
or two. But no, it really comes down to what's the entertainment factor in the room,
Okay.
or on the WebEx, so or wherever you have an opportunity to do your training.
Okay.
Is it enjoyable?
Okay.
Now I'm not saying you're going to have jokes thrown all over the place.
Right,
It's
right.
not a comic show,
Right.
but you're going to have fun. You're going to enjoy yourself. It's going to be entertaining, right? So my style is entertaining.
Okay, good.
Right. I minimize PowerPoint slides.
Interesting.
I like discussion. I
Okay.
throw out research.
Okay.
That's
Because you have your
interesting.
PhD.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I have
Yeah.
my doctorate.
Yeah.
And that helps me from a research perspective,
Right,
To
right.
understand that I think it's important that we bring that in,
Right.
And also provides an opportunity for people to learn,
Right,
right,
right.
outside of just what they're getting from me,
Right,
in particular,
right.
So I think it's entertaining. Second thing is I think you need to have content that's relevant,
Right.
and you need to be able to do it in short spaces of opportunity, which
Yeah,
means like
bursts.
role-playing bursts,
Right.
where you learn it,
Right.
you do it over and over again,
Right.
to the point where you feel comfortable,
Right.
at least enough to go out and try it when we leave.
Right.
So, and I'm very pragmatic in my approaches, Brian. I don't like to bring in fluff.
Right.
I don't like a lot of fluff.
Right.
I like stuff that works. And
Okay.
with my experience and background and all the people that I've trained through the many years, I know what works.
Right.
People have told me.
Right.
So I really massage my courses and put in content
Right.
that's relevant and that's doable and workable, and making sure that it sticks.
Right.
I try to encourage all customers to do activities or have some kind of debrief sessions,
Mm-hmm.
2 months, 12 weeks
Mm-hmm.
after the class, so that we can come back and say, okay, what's working, what's not, let's talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
let's see what issues and challenges you're having. So you try to move them through the process of continuing, the habit making, the habit forming.
And you also
right?
do it through WebExes, and you also do it through some distance learning and
Sure.
things like that, right? So it's
Sure.
not always Mark has to come in.
Doesn't have to be at all, because
Okay.
I know how hard sometimes it is for everyone to get to
Right.
one place, plus budgets are tight.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Okay.
Obviously, certain skill sets, I think the classroom face-to-face is a better
I totally
climate
agree with
for
that.
it.
Right.
But I'll let the customer know
Right.
what choices they have.
Right.
But definitely have different modes of instruction.
That is awesome. Well, this was awesome. I think when you hear leadership in sales and communication, which is obviously what you do, people can think of that as a big discussion.
Sure.
But what I'm hearing is pragmatism is really standing out. What I'm hearing is practicality, which might actually be the same thing as pragmatism. I don't know, but I think it is.
Close.
Yeah. So pragmatic, something that people can actually use. Something that you're entertaining, you're engaging them, and then I also like that point, Mark, you made about walking them through the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have this, Mark comes in and speaks, and then you have this next step where Mark is now facilitating, maybe through some
Right.
WebExes or just whatever,
Right.
and then you have this next phase where Mark is, this whole time Mark is enabling
Right.
people to move as the client to move forward their people through whatever it is that they decide to do.
Exactly. Because that's what I would want as an organization.
That is awesome.
And at the end of the day,
Yeah.
leaders want to lead,
Right.
salespeople want to sell,
Right.
And people that want to communicate well want to have good, clear communication. That's what you get.
Well, that is well said and well done. So let's wrap it up here real quick. My name is Brian Hilliard. This is Mark Shank. Thanks so much for stopping by. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.